Part 77. Doomsday Special Forces. Author, Huanjing Chengzhu. Chapter 761. The three of Shalumi looked at each other, then nodded together, and then the three of them saluted the Kali leader with the Kali etiquette, then turned and walked out. Chief. Are you really leaving them here? The yellow helmet came behind the leader and asked softly. Staying here is the best choice for them. The Kali leader sighed softly. I hope they can reach the primordial star and find our people. Maybe, the human named Wang Feng will be of some help to our people on the primordial star in the future. The yellow helmet looked at the figures of the three of Shalumi leaving, and fell into deep thought. Wang Feng, who walked out of the Kali space battleship, stood silently under the battleship and looked up. At this time, Shalumi San Xiao also came out and stood quietly behind Wang Feng. Watching the Kali race's space battleship gradually rise and finally disappear in the sky, Wang Feng murmured. Maybe, we are all the original stars. He spoke in a very low voice, and even Shalumi San Xiao didn't hear the last half of the sentence clearly, because Wang Feng only moved his lips slightly, but didn't make any sound. Boy, what did you say? Dong Huangtai seemed to be aroused by Wang Feng's curiosity, so he took the initiative to ask. Guess. Wang Feng replied lightly, and then walked towards the Yanhuang. Dong Huangtai was almost choked by Wang Feng's answer, so he simply ignored Wang Feng. After Wang Feng entered the Yanhuang, Lu Wanting rushed over with a gust of fragrant wind. Since Wang Feng got the Yanhuang, the opportunity for the two to meet alone can be said to be very few. Especially, every time the two of them parted, it is very likely to be the last time they meet. If this happened before the end of the world, I'm afraid that this kind of suffering is not something that any girl in her early 20s can endure. However, after living in the end of the world for so long, Lu Wanting has long been accustomed to this lifestyle. Even when she was on the Hope, when she looked at the Space Ghost battleship opposite, Lu Wanting had already said goodbye to Wang Feng silently in her heart. Now Lu Wanting, who is hugging Wang Feng, feels that she can only be described as if she were in another world. Wang Feng gently hugged Lu Wanting without saying anything, because no matter what he said, it would be redundant at this time. The two of them just hugged each other quietly, listening to each other's heartbeats, and they didn't separate for a long time. Boom boom boom. Looking down at the waves constantly hitting the cliff below, Wang Feng and Duan Lei seemed to be immersed in memories. After an unknown amount of time, Duan Lei was the first to break the silence. Madman. Duan Lei looked at Wang Feng, then hesitated and gently pointed at Wang Feng's body. Wang Feng nodded knowingly. Speak, only the two of us can hear it. Dong Huangtai's consciousness has been sealed in the Xianyuan sword by me. That's good. Duan Lei nodded and said. Did you ask me to come here because of the matter of the original star? At this time, the two were in the southernmost part of the Nanzhou continent, far away from where their warships were parked. And the two were standing on a high mountain facing the sea, and the surroundings were clear at a glance. That's right. Wang Feng nodded. I'm thinking now, should we go to the original star? If we go, should everyone go? Do you think there is something wrong with the original star? Duan Lei asked tentatively. All right Liza, don't use this trick on me. Wang Feng said helplessly. Even if I'm not as smart as you, I know you too well. Your expression now. Ha ha ha. Duan Lei laughed. Then I won't beat around the bush. Then, Duan Lei's expression became solemn, and he frowned and said. According to my guess, the original star must be not simple, and, whether it is us humans, the Kali tribe, or even the cosmic ghost tribe. The reason why all these races left the original star should not be just what we know now, but because of the competition for resources and territory within the original star. That's right. Wang Feng nodded and looked at the boundless sea. I feel that all of us who left the primitive star are pawns of the high-level officials in the primitive star. They must have some purpose in expelling us, but without reaching the primitive star, I'm afraid we can't figure out the truth behind it. But once you enter the primitive star, it will be very difficult to leave. Speaking of this, Wang Feng retracted his gaze and looked at Duan Lei. So, even now, I am still hesitating whether to go to the primitive star. Now, 70 days have passed since the leader of the Kali tribe left this planet. And Duan Lei and his team are finally ready to pass through the space overlap. Although they have not actually operated it yet, they have practiced it quite a lot. So, today is the time for them to leave this planet. For this day, everyone has been fully prepared, and their journey has been fully informed to all those who are going to set off together. If someone does not want to leave, they can stay in the South Continent and continue to live, and Wang Feng and his team will leave them enough food and seeds. However, after learning about Wang Feng's itinerary, no one is willing to stay on this planet. Not to mention that the cosmic ghost may find this planet at any time. Just the journey mentioned by Wang Feng has made these guys excited. The first planet after the human race entered the universe, the mother planet, and the birthplace of the human race, the original star? This kind of cosmic travel can be experienced once in a lifetime, even if it means death, it can be regarded as no regrets. While Duan Lei and his team were constantly contacting the driving of the space battleship in space, Wang Feng took Lu Wanting to visit the entire planet. Wang Feng even took Lu Wanting into the Black Dragon River and let her see the place where he killed the turtle and the underwater passage that was unforgettable to him. Although the Yanhuang was at the end of the passage before, and the huge ship of the Yanhuang broke out of the ground later. But it did not cause any impact on the Black Dragon River and the Black Dragon Bridge. Because the original location of the Yanhuang was still quite far away from the Black Dragon River. That's why Wang Feng needed to swim for several days and nights in the underwater passage. When he learned that Duan Lei and the others were all ready and could go to the mother planet at any time, Wang Feng finally brought Lu Wanting back to the South Continent. On the way back, Wang Feng also drove a small fighter plane and circled over the Hope Base. It seems that the Hope Base has returned to peace again, but it doesn't feel as busy as before. In broad daylight, it is difficult to see a few survivors working in the farmland outside. However, Wang Feng and Lu Wanting only felt a little melancholy in their hearts, and didn't care too much. Because the base below is no longer their original Hope Base. After returning to the South Continent and meeting Duan Lei on the Hope, Wang Feng gave the order to prepare for departure, and then pulled Duan Lei onto the small fighter plane, and the two came here together. Because Wang Feng's doubts now could not be known to too many people, so as not to dampen their morale. So, naturally, he could only discuss with Duan Lei alone, and even Wang Feng's guesses in his heart were not told to Lu Wanting. After hearing Wang Feng's words, Duan Lei also fell into deep thought, but soon he raised his head. Crazy. The original star may be very dangerous, but, do you still remember how we felt when we tore off the epaulets and walked out of the small building? At that time, we walked out of the small building, and it was also dangerous. There were zombies rampant outside, and we were just two soldiers who were slightly stronger than ordinary people. This dark apocalypse did not bury us. Perhaps, we have been changed a little by this apocalypse, but at least, we can still sleep peacefully and live steadily. What's wrong with the original star? At the beginning, the two of us dared to venture into this apocalypse. Now we have 2 warships and tens of millions of people. Are we still afraid of a primitive star? Don't think too much. We are lucky to have survived the apocalypse until now. Being able to visit the birthplace of the human race and to land on the first planet in the universe. For the humans on our planet, this is a very rare opportunity. Speaking of this, Duan Lei suddenly looked entangled. Should we charge those guys some money? Just treat it as leading a tour group? Wang Feng was stunned. When did Lazy Eye become so funny? Why didn't I notice it before? However, after listening to Duan Lei's words, Wang Feng's originally depressed mood was much better. Before, he just felt that he had brought so many people out by himself. If something happened, he would have a great burden in his heart. I guess Duan Lei also knew what Wang Feng was thinking at this time, so he said such a thing, and it was rare to make a joke at the end. Okay. I understand. Lazy eye. Wang Feng patted Duan Lei on the shoulder. Go back. Get ready to go. Duan Lei nodded, and then entered the small fighter with Wang Feng. The small fighter took off and flew towards the north at a high speed. Doomsday Special Forces. Author, Huanjing Chengzhu. Chapter 762. When Wang Feng and Duan Lei returned to the location of the two space battleships, they found that everyone was ready. Lu Feng, Meng Fei, Lu Qiang, Lu Wanting and other core members all walked over and came to Wang Feng and Duan Lei. Madman, are you leaving today or tomorrow? Lu Feng was the first to ask. Brother Feng. Why don't you leave tomorrow? It's a bit late today. Mars squeezed up and said with a playful smile. Mars, are you short-sighted? His bad friend Hao Shui never misses every opportunity to embarrass Mars. We are going into the universe. Does it have anything to do with the weather? Do you think you are going to catch a train? Oh. His name is Mars, maybe he has a special affection for trains. Li Fei immediately joined in. Mars. How about, do you think this will work? Let's take the space battleship and leave first, and you can catch the train and chase us. You two think I'm stupid, don't you? Can I still buy a train ticket at this time? Firestar said angrily. You're looking for scalpers. Hao Shui said seriously. The real name system has been implemented for a long time, so why are there still scalpers? Li Fei actually said that he believed it. Okay. Shut up, you three. Tang Haoshan shouted, if these three guys are ignored, the three of them can keep talking until the book is finished. Wang Feng and Duan Lei shook their heads with a smile. They actually knew in their hearts that Mars and the others just wanted to stay on this planet for one more day. Just like a child who is about to leave home after the Chinese New Year, he always hopes that time will pass as slowly as possible. The mood of the Martian trio at this moment probably represents the mood of most people in the Hope Base. However, no matter what, they have to leave anyway. Staying one more day and one day less actually makes no difference. Even if they stay for one more month, I'm afraid they will still be reluctant to leave when they leave. Do you know? Wang Feng suddenly raised his head, looked at the sky, and said softly. Actually, I don't want to leave either. I really want to be able to turn back time and return to the world before the end of the world. Although, at that time, I was just an ordinary soldier. Not to mention my current strength, even a strengthener could easily kill me. But I would rather not have everything in front of me, the space battleship. Xianyuan sword. Xianyuan space. The power of hair. Even my ability to fly now. I can give up on all of this, as long as this apocalypse doesn't happen, the Devourer, the ghost of the universe, and so many things that we don't even want to remember will appear. But, we all know that this is completely impossible. Time can never be cheated. No one can let themselves go back to even 1 second before. On this planet, we have experienced so much, and now we even have to give up the base of hope that we were proud of before. In order to defend this base, too many of our companions have left us. And now, although we have given up that base, Bishui Garden and Ganlin County, but we have not given up on the Hope Base. We established the Hope Base, so wherever we go, the Hope Base will be there. We are leaving now just because we are not strong enough to defend our homeland. So, we are going to the original star to regain our lost abilities and everything we should have. Without strength, even if we find a new home again, we will still have to give up when the enemy attacks, and we will even lose many compatriots. Only when we are all strong, can we kill all enemies who dare to invade us, and make all creatures fear us. At that time, we can truly have our own home and re-establish a base of hope. If we stay here, when the cosmic ghost fleet attacks, all we can do is destroy this planet together. This is not what we want, nor is it what those brothers who have the same dream as us, but fell on the way forward, want. We must strengthen ourselves, help them take revenge, and build a base of hope that no one dares to invade. This is my dream. My hope. So, I want to go to the mother planet, to the original star. Brothers, are you, together? Together. All the people in front of Wang Feng roared together, and their voices soared into the sky, attracting the attention of other survivors. At this time, all the survivors, whether they were combatants, old people, women, and children, were standing on the ground. Because this may be the last moment they stay on this planet. After leaving, they should never be able to see the planet they were born in again. There is a trace of nostalgia in everyone's heart, and there is a trace of reluctance in everyone's heart. They bent down one after another, collected a handful of soil on the ground, and then collected it carefully. In the future, when they think of the planet that raised them, perhaps the smell of this handful of soil will be the only way for them to recall this planet. In fact, Wang Feng has opened up a cultivation room on the Yanhuang to grow various crops. The cultivation room, which covers nearly 10 acres, is filled with soil from this planet. With a constant supply of life energy, the cultivation room will continuously supply them with food for daily needs. This cannot be done in the Hope, because the Hope is different from the Yanhuang. Although the internal space is larger than that of the Yanhuang, it is not suitable for planting due to the use of space technology. However, although there is a large amount of soil from this planet in the cultivation room, these survivors still left some soil again as their eternal memorial. Wang Feng thought, if these humans can really continue, perhaps this handful of soil will become their heirloom, passed down from generation to generation forever. Seeing that all the survivors were looking over, Wang Feng slowly turned around and faced them, then, with all his strength, shouted loudly, "Hope Base! Let's go!" After hearing Wang Feng's order, all the survivors turned together and saluted the newly erected military soul monument on the Nanzhou continent. After holding on for a minute, they put down their arms and then turned around to enter the Yanhuang, while Lu Feng and other core members also turned around and left, entering the Yanhuang and Hope respectively. Because the Hope has never crossed the space overlap point, now all the survivors, even the Hope fighters who were driving the small fighters in the Hope, have all entered the Yanhuang. On the Hope, there are only those who must be retained to drive the warship, in order to prevent accidents. After all, no matter how well they are trained, Duan Lei is still not 100% sure if they have not really passed it once. However, due to space reasons, the 80 fighters that survived on the Hope were not transferred to the Yanhuang. The new military soul monument on the Nanzhou continent was made by Wang Feng using the Xianyuan sword to cut off a whole piece of rock on a mountain, making two huge stone monuments as high as 100 meters. Fortunately, there is the space of the Xianyuan sword, otherwise, bringing it here would also be a huge project. The biggest difference between these two military soul monuments and the previous military soul monument is that, there are more than 2.4 million names on this military soul monument. One of these two military soul monuments was erected on the Nanzhou continent, the last place they stayed on this planet. The other one is in Wang Feng's Xianyuan space. This military soul monument will be placed there forever, and it is foreseeable that the names engraved on it may increase. At the beginning, these two military soul monuments stood side by side on the Nanzhou continent. Lu Feng and others were responsible for the name of one of them, while Wang Feng was responsible for the name of the other one. Because Wang Feng could fly, he could carve names much faster than Lu Feng and the others. Although they all knew that it would be much easier to put the military soul monument down and then carve names. However, in the Hope base, only dead soldiers would fall down, although the soldiers represented by these names were indeed sleeping. But in the hearts of other soldiers, these brothers, these comrades, these guys who would appear in front of them as soon as they closed their eyes and laugh and scold them, they were, are, and will always be with them. In their eyes, those names could be transformed into faces that were either laughing, scolding, sad, or resolute. Who said there was no clothes? I share the same clothes with you. After seeing all the personnel board the space battleship, Wang Feng and Duan Lei also turned around silently and saluted the military soul monument solemnly. 3 minutes later, Wang Feng and Duan Lei put down their arms one after another, then looked at each other, then looked around, and finally looked at the planet that gave birth to them, and then walked towards the Yanhuang and Hope respectively. The fighter plane that Wang Feng had driven before was not taken back by Wang Feng, but quietly stopped beside the military soul monument, as if guarding them. The two space battleships rose up at the same time, looking at the increasingly smaller Nanzhou continent below. Wang Feng and his companions silently bid farewell to their home planet, Atlantis, in their hearts. Goodbye, Atlantis. Goodbye, my home planet. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Doomsday Special Forces. Author, Huanjing Chengzhu. Chapter 763. The vast universe is boundless, and the darkness is so deep that it makes people intoxicated. In this vast space, two space battleships, one large and one small, were heading in the same direction, one behind the other. After a while, the large battleship in front seemed to suddenly enter a distorted space. After an illusory flicker, it magically disappeared. The small space battleship behind them paused for a moment, then headed towards the direction where the large space battleship had disappeared. Then, what happened to the large space battleship before also appeared on this small space battleship? Then, the small space battleship mysteriously disappeared. Ha 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 ha. Damn it, come here, come here. I'm really a genius. Tang Haoshan's wild scream sounded on the Yanhuang and Hope ships at the same time. Damn. Old Tang. It's all your fault for cooperating with us to travel through space. That's okay. Next time we travel through space again, we will all go to the Yanhuang and leave the Hope to you to drive. Gui Weivong curled his lips and said contemptuously. Hee hee. It's all. It's all. We are all geniuses. Okay. Tang Haoshan laughed and said, he was also excited just now, that's why he was talking nonsense. However, except for Gui Weivong, no one else spoke out to ridicule him. Naturally, the Martian trio who were the loudest would not dare. According to Tang Haoshan's qualifications, those who dared to joke with him unscrupulously were the few giants such as Lu Qiang and Lu Feng. And among these people, Gui Weivong is the one who can have a few words with Tang Haoshan if nothing happens. Liza. Isn't it good? Wang Feng's words came out from the communicator, causing Gui Weivong, who was about to say something, to swallow his own words. Ha ha. It's not bad. It's no different from what we practiced in advance. With this practical experience, there will be no problems in the future. Duan Lei finally breathed a sigh of relief and smiled. Just before entering the space point, everyone on the Hope seemed very nervous. Because this was the first time they had to actually travel through space. Although they had practiced it many times before, they had never practiced it in practice. In particular, they had only read relevant information about space Duidian. As for what it's like inside, what accidents might happen during the time travel, etc., they just keep their eyes peeled and don't know anything. The only thing they can be sure of is that if they fail to travel through space, their hope will be torn apart by space in an instant, and their bones will be gone. The only thing that can be certain is that he will definitely die after failure. For the crew on the Hope, this is really not as certain as anything. Therefore, when watching the space stacking points getting closer and closer, everyone on board the Hope was extremely nervous. It's not just because they are afraid of death, but mainly because they know that this journey is to first go to the mother planet of the human race, and then to the birthplace of all intelligent life, the first planet in the universe, the primitive planet. Star up. If you miss such a trip, you will really die in peace. Especially since they had experienced so many enemies and survived, and finally died in a traffic accident when they were on their way. This is so frustrating. Fortunately, they finally crossed the space point safely. Especially, this successful crossing gave them a real understanding of the space point. In the future, as long as there are no accidents when traveling through space, there will definitely be no problem. In fact, after traveling through time, Du and Lei also discovered that although the space overlap seemed scary to them, it was actually similar to driving through the tunnel before. As long as it doesn't hit the back and the tunnel collapses, there won't be any problems at all. This also coincides with the saying, the unknown is the scary thing. The Hope caught up with the Yanhuang waiting there, and then the two space battleships successfully docked. The crew members of the Yanhuang who originally belonged to the Hope began to return to the Hope. As they passed by, there were many non-combatants, because a breeding room was opened on the Yanhuang for growing crops. This breeding room takes up a lot of space, so the space on the Yanhuang is not enough. With so many people, it's okay to stay temporarily for a while, but if it lasts for a long time, the space will seem too small. There were originally several rooms on the Yanhuang ship that were used for planting, but Wang Feng felt that those rooms were too small, and they were all about 1 acre of land. Now that there were so many of them, it was obvious that this was not enough, so a new breeding room was specially opened. He also planted the willow tree in the center of the cultivation room, but because it was inside the space battleship, the willow tree had to shrink a lot. Moreover, in order to still hang the huge mutant honeycomb, the willow tree had to change the arrangement of its branches and leaves. Now in the plantation, the combination of willow trees and beehives looks like a sledgehammer stuck upside down in the ground, which is very funny. After the two battleships exchanged personnel, they headed towards the home star again. According to the star map in the Yanhuang, it will take them almost 2 years to reach the mother planet. And during this period, they need to cross a total of 107 space overlaps. It seems that what awaits them is really a long journey. In fact, traveling in the universe is really boring, because the scenery is completely the same. Except for occasionally seeing a few strange-shaped planets that can arouse some interest, basically no one will lie on the porthole and look out like when they first entered the universe. Maybe seeing that everyone is really bored, Number 7, who was personally taught by instructor Li Yingning, began to take up Li Yingning's old business and became an instructor. Because Number 7 is also a devourer, it is quite convenient for devourers to impart experience. Once the two consciousness cores touch, it is like a copy, and Number 7 becomes a qualified instructor like Li Yingning. His training target is those children, so from then on, watching the children's training has become the most popular entertainment project on the two warships. Because the Hope looks like a small battleship, in order to save energy and facilitate the connection between the two battleships. Therefore, as long as it is not crossing the space overlap, the Hope space battleship will be carried on the Yanhuang to sail together. Because the connection channel between the Yanhuang and the Hope has been open, the two battleships are actually no different from one. Therefore, even the crew members on the Hope like to run to the Yanhuang when they have nothing to do, watching those children with bitter faces, and conducting various inhumane training under the supervision of Number 7. However, the good times did not last long, because their enthusiasm was too high, so Number 7 simply included them. Number 7 also pulled all the soldiers who liked to watch the excitement over and let them go back to the furnace. Now, those guys who often watch the excitement finally know the disadvantages of watching the excitement blindly, but they dare not disobey No. 7's orders at all. Just kidding, Number 7 is the last devourer in the entire universe, and they don't want to taste the taste of being sucked of vitality by the devourer. Although Number 7 will not really suck their vitality, but just absorbing a little and then replenishing it, the sourness they feel in this back and forth is really too uncomfortable. So, Yan Huang soon added another entertainment project. However, this time, not many people went to watch it, that is, those old people and women, in their spare time, would go to the side and watch for a while with a smile. Other soldiers, even those men among the non-combat members, did not dare to watch it, for fear of being dragged away by Number 7. When in the Hope base, Li Yingning's training was completely confidential and not allowed to be watched by anyone. But now, because Number 7 is the one who carries out the training, he has no concept of confidentiality at all. Wang Feng naturally knew about this situation, but he did not have any opinions. Not only did he not stop it, but he strongly supported it. Because they will definitely face many battles when they arrive at the primitive star in the future, the more they strengthen now, the less they will lose in the future. Sweat more in training, bleed less in war, this slogan has been shouted in the army for thousands of years. And Wang Feng also knows that Number 7 is using his own way to remind people not to forget Li Yingning. Although he has promised Number 7 that the instructor is still alive, he is now missing after all, and Number 7 can't feel his existence. The entire race is left with only himself. This feeling, Wang Feng feels terrible just thinking about it. Wang Feng has no way to comfort Number 7 now, so if this method can make Number 7 feel better, then let him go. Just after Wang Feng and his team passed through 6 space overlaps, the dull space voyage finally showed a slight change. This time, it was still the Yanhuang that passed through the space overlap first, and the Hope followed closely behind. Because they couldn't know the situation on the other side of the space overlap in advance, and the Yanhuang, as the flagship of the human race, was driven by Wang Feng alone, so its flexibility was naturally much better than that of the Hope. So the Yanhuang had always been the first to take the lead, and this time, just after passing through the space overlap, Wang Feng discovered an unexpected situation. Doomsday Special Forces. Author, Huanjing Chengzhu. Chapter 764. This unexpected situation was not because there was an ambush outside the space point. In fact, even if there was an ambush, Wang Feng was not very afraid, because every time he rushed out of the space point, he would turn on the energy shield. And he would pass through the space point at the maximum speed, as long as the opponent did not already know the exact time when he passed through the space point. Then at the moment when he flew out of the space point, if the first space battleship focused on him directly, he would not encounter too much trouble. And this time, after Wang Feng flew out of the space point, the space detector of the Yanhuang suddenly sounded an alarm. Wang Feng then looked over and found that there was actually a space fleet flying towards the space point where he was now. It would take more than a day for the opponent to arrive here. Since the opponent's fleet was displayed on the space detector, Wang Feng did not know which side this space fleet belonged to. However, in terms of quantity, the opponent had more than 5,000 space battleships, which was not much different from the size of the space fleet of the Space Ghost. At this time, Du Enlai and his team had already rushed out of the space overlap, and because they had been with Wang Feng's Yanhuang, the Hope space detector was not turned on. Such a large-scale detector consumes a lot of energy, so every bit of energy saved is a bit. Just as Du Enlai habitually wanted to carry the Hope to the Yanhuang, Wang Feng's voice came. Liza. A space fleet was found flying towards our space overlap, but they are not moving now. Wang Feng can find the other party, and the other party can naturally find them. In fact, The space detectors on large space battleships can even find the other party's space battleship a week in advance as long as the battleship is not on the planet. The reason why the distance between the two sides is only a little more than a day is because Wang Feng and his team have just crossed from the space overlap. While explaining the situation to Duan Lei, Wang Feng has already started intelligence sharing. In this way, even if the Hope does not turn on the space detector, Duan Lei can directly see the picture that Wang Feng sees. On the star map, a group of dense dots appeared in front of them, and now those dots, like them, stayed in place. Madman! It's the fleet of the Space Ghost. Duan Lei only looked at it for a few seconds, and then said with certainty. The number of the other fleet is almost exactly the same as that of the Space Ghost fleet, and the most important thing is that they have all stopped now. If it is a creature we have never encountered, how could such a huge space fleet of theirs stop because of our two space battleships? Maybe, they will think that our other space battleships are still on the other side of the space overlap and have not come over. Wang Feng said tentatively. Shouldn't be. Duan Lei directly refuted. Anyway, the person opposite was Wang Feng. For them, there was no such thing as saving face. Besides, his original identity was the military advisor of the Hope base, and he was a think tank. Madman. Although we have almost no experience in fighting in space, the battles in space are not much different from those on the ground. At least, in terms of strategy, there should be no difference, but in terms of tactics, we have to move closer to the three-dimensional battlefield. In any case, if we are a space fleet, we should immediately let all the warships rush out of the space overlap. Then form an attack or defense formation, approach them, or escape from here, and should not stop here at the space overlap. Even if we send a small fighter to communicate with the other party. It is a normal reaction. But the other party chose to stop everything for the abnormality on our side, so I feel that our two warships must have made them feel something, so they will not move. And the creatures that know our two space battleships, in the entire universe, I am afraid, only the Space Ghost. Duan Lei guessed correctly. The fleet opposite is a fleet of the Space Ghost. This fleet received the order to assemble, and then it headed towards the direction where the fleet of Rikus was staying. It was just that they were about to pass the space overlap where Wang Feng and his team were now, so they met them on a narrow road. While Wang Feng and his team were discussing, the commander of the fleet on the opposite side was also contacting his headquarters. Although he had not seen Wang Feng and his team's space battleships with his own eyes, Rikus had reported clearly before that the very powerful human race had two space battleships. One large and one small, and one was a human space battleship and the other was a space battleship on their side. And now, the two space battleships that suddenly appeared at the space overlap happened to be one large and one small, which could still be seen on the star map of the space detector. So the commander of the opposite space fleet naturally regarded them as the two space battleships mentioned by Rikus. Although the other side only had two space battleships, the commander of this space fleet did not dare to be careless at all. According to Rikus' report, the combat power of the smaller of the two space battleships is average, and even inferior to their battleships. But the larger space battleship is quite terrifying. It is said that it alone destroyed nearly 100 of their space battleships. Although those space battleships were more or less injured, according to Rikus, even an entire space fleet might not be the opponent of the human battleship. At the beginning, after seeing the report sent by Rikus, the commander of the space fleet sneered at Rikus' report. In his opinion, one battleship can destroy their entire fleet, one against 5 or 6,000. This is simply a fantasy. If the human race is really so powerful, their space fleet would not have been completely destroyed by their two fleets, and not even a small fighter would be left. In the end, they relied on detonating the entire galaxy to destroy their two space fleets together. However, although he didn't believe it in his heart, when the two warships really appeared in front of him, the commander of the space fleet felt a sense of fear inexplicably. So, he ordered the fleet to stop moving immediately, and then immediately sent a report to the headquarters to ask how to deal with it. While waiting for a reply, the commander of the space fleet kept staring at the two space battleships on the star map. After finding that they were also parked at the space overlap point and did not approach him, he breathed a sigh of relief. The commander of the space fleet found that in his heart, he was actually hoping that the headquarters would give him an order to avoid the opponent. Even he himself couldn't explain why he had this idea. Was it because of the previous report from Rikus? In any case, he now has a reorganized space fleet, and nearly 6,000 large and small space battleships are intact. The commander of the space fleet didn't believe that his fleet would not be able to defeat a large space battleship. At this time, a situation that made the commander of the space fleet depressed appeared. The order from the Space Ghost headquarters had not yet been transmitted back, but the two space battleships on the star map had already begun to move forward, and the direction was exactly their space fleet. What are they trying to do? The commander of the space fleet asked in a trembling voice. Originally, there was already a trace of fear in his heart, and now, this fear was infinitely expanding. He knew in his heart that the two space battleships on the opposite side must have discovered them. Faced with such a large number of space battleships, not only did they not try to bypass them, but they took the initiative to approach them. Do they really have the confidence to rely on these two space battleships to fight against their entire space fleet? Because from the looks of them, they don't seem to be planning to come over to say hello. If you want to say hello, at least you should send a small fighter to communicate first, right? At the very least, it should be that small space battleship that comes first, right? But now, it is obvious that the large space battleship is in front and the small space battleship is behind. The commander of the space fleet clenched his fists tightly. No one gave him an answer to his question just now. Because the other space ghosts have also seen the other party's intention, that is, fight. Two space battleships took the initiative to attack nearly 6,000 space battleships. When did this world become so crazy? The other space ghosts were thinking about this question in their hearts, but soon, something that shocked them even more happened. Everyone prepare to attack, line up, defensive formation. The commander of the space fleet gave an order loudly, and this order shocked the other space ghosts at the same time. Especially the commanders on other battleships, they all doubted whether they had heard it wrong. Because of their status, they did not see the report of Rikus, and naturally they did not know the existence of Yanhuang. So, they felt it was absurd. Just two space battleships, they can be killed by a concentrated fire. Their commander actually asked them to form a defensive formation in the face of the attack of these two space battleships. Isn't this a formation that should only be used when the situation is disadvantageous? Doomsday Special Forces. Author, Huanjing Chengzhu. Chapter 765. However, the discipline of the cosmic ghost is no less than that of the devourer. Therefore, although the commanders of other battleships were doubtful, they still formed a defensive formation according to the orders of their fleet commanders. As a result, a very funny scene that even made those cosmic ghosts feel quite embarrassed appeared. 5,000 to 6,000 space battleships, large and small, formed a dense defense formation in space, waiting for the two space battleships, one large and one small, as if facing a formidable enemy. As for why they formed a defensive formation, the commander of the space fleet did not explain to his subordinates because he was annoyed. Because there is no way to explain this at all, how should I say it? Could it be that the two battleships on the opposite side are so powerful that we may not be able to defeat them? If he really said this, his prestige among this fleet would definitely plummet. He led an entire space fleet, but was frightened by two space battleships and put into a defensive formation. This can't be justified no matter what. Especially since they have never seen how ferocious and invincible Wang Feng's Yanhuang is. If the order were given by Rikus, the warships under his command would be able to accept it, and they would even hope that Rikus would directly issue the order to retreat. Because they had at least seen with their own eyes the small fighter plane that Fuchsi had piloted. Although Fuchsi's results were not very high due to his firepower, he was able to shoot down more than one space battleship with a small fighter plane. If you show this kind of record, you can definitely pretend to be awesome for a lifetime. Because they did not want to reveal their speed prematurely, Wang Feng and the others did not move forward at full speed. They just maintained a speed similar to that of the Space Ghost battleship and flew towards the fleet. Therefore, one day later, the warships of both sides appeared within the other's sight. At this time, the commander of the space fleet had already received the order from the Space Ghost headquarters. The order from the Space Ghost headquarters is simple. First, adopt a defensive formation and test the opponent with a small number of space battleships and a large number of space fighters. If the opponent's warship is really what Rikus said, then he is allowed to choose to retreat on his own. However, when retreating, try to destroy the other space battleship, because according to Rikus's intelligence, the other space battleship has average combat power. In this case, it can be regarded as causing certain losses to the other party. Moreover, the headquarters of the Space Ghost also asked the commander of the space fleet to act according to the opportunity. It would be best to use the space battleship with low combat power to hold back the human battleship. If he can use another warship to cause damage to this human warship, then he will be improved. Among the group of cosmic ghosts, the commander of a fleet is not really a high-level person. One more step forward, and you will truly enter the real circle inside the cosmic ghost. Therefore, this order from the Space Ghost headquarters slightly alleviated the fear in the commander of the space fleet. After all, the cosmic ghosts are not devourers. They also have greed and desire, and they also have the ambition to climb up. Especially now that he has received the order from the headquarters, the commander of the space fleet can no longer have so many scruples when issuing orders. Do you see? It's not that I'm timid, but it's the headquarters order. I can't go against the headquarters, right? This guy deliberately passed the orders from the headquarters directly to the commanders of other battleships, and then directly arranged the next tactics according to the orders from the headquarters. And when Wang Feng's battleship finally appeared in their sight, although it was still far away, the fleet of cosmic ghosts had already begun to change. The first was that 500 space battleships and tens of millions of space warplanes left their defensive formations and faced Wang Feng's Yanhuang. The remaining space battleships shrank again and still maintained their defensive formation. The actions of Wang Feng and the others made these cosmic ghosts even more angry, because when they saw the cosmic ghosts having warships coming to attack them, one of the two warships actually stopped. Of course, the one that stopped was the Hope, while the Yanhuang continued to rush towards the Space Ghost battleship group single-handedly. Although Duanlei and the others are now quite familiar with the operation of the Hope, they are still not able to withstand a battle of this level. Although the Hope was modified by Xianyuan, after all, the battleship itself was modified from the battleship of the Space Ghost. Therefore, no matter how the performance is improved, the improvement is limited after all. According to Duanlei's estimation, if the Hope faced 2 or 3 space battleships, it should be able to escape unscathed after wiping out the enemies. If there are more, the Hope may be in danger. Although Wang Feng's life energy can be said to be rich in reserves now, the capacity of the Hope is only so much. Just like a car, even if your home runs a gas station, you can only hold 1 tank of gas at a time. For Wang Feng, his life energy can be replenished into the Yanhuang number 1 at any time, but there is nothing he can do about the Hope number 1. No matter how advanced the space battleship is, it can't be refueled wirelessly, right? Seeing the Yanhuang coming alone, the commanders of the space battleships who came to fight Wang Feng couldn't help but feel a little depressed. They all saw the order from the Space Ghost headquarters, which asked them to prioritize attacking the small space battleship and use the small space battleship to contain the large one. And they still have a combat mission, which is to destroy the small space battleship as much as possible. But now, that battleship has no intention of joining the battle at all. How can they fight? Just when the commanders of these space battleships were thinking about what they should do, the commander of the space fleet gave them an order remotely. Listen, separate 5 space battleships to deal with the small space battleship, while the other space battleships attack the large one with all their strength. They must destroy it at all costs. After receiving this order, the commanders of these 500 space battleships could not help but feel itching with hatred. The small one sent 5 ships, and the rest actually attacked the big one. This ratio is too big, right? However, they did not dare to disobey orders. They separated out 5 space battleships and prepared to bypass Wang Feng and kill the Hope directly. Seeing the actions of the cosmic ghost, it was Duan Lei's turn to be depressed this time. It was obvious that they were basically ignored. Such a large group of space battleships actually sent 5 space battleships to attack them. Everyone else rushed towards Wang Feng. Is the gap too big? Especially among the tens of millions of small fighter planes, none of them followed. They were all heading towards Wang Feng. How dare these bastards look down on me? Tang Haoshan couldn't help but curse loudly. What the hell, there's a huge group of lunatics there, but we only have 5 ships here, especially not one of those small fighters came. Humph. Damn it. This is treating us like soft persimmons. Gui Wuivong also said angrily. Why do you care so much about him? There was no big change on Lu Feng's face, but a hint of anger could be seen in his eyes. Whether they look down on us or don't take us seriously at all, can't we just let these 5 space battleships come and go without any return? That's right. Mars jumped up. In novels, this is called a slap in the face. Okay. If they look down on us, just look down on us. It just so happens that they gave us an opportunity to train our troops. Duan Lei's words stopped Martian from continuing to rage. He said calmly. From his face, it was impossible to tell that he was terribly depressed now. I originally felt that we would have no problem dealing with 2 or 3 space battleships. But now that 5 ships have arrived, let's raise our requirements a little higher. Let's just keep these 5 warships. Hearing Duan Lei's words, other people nodded. These 5 space battleships must be dealt with by themselves. If 5 space battleships came in a row and they all needed Wang Feng's cover, they would stop messing around as soon as possible. Madman. Don't worry about those 5 space battleships. Just let them go and give us some practice. Duan Lei said to the communicator. You only need to be responsible for the other half. When Wang Feng heard Duan Lei's words, he almost spat out a mouthful of blood. Damn it! When did Duan Lei become so sinister? The other half? Co-author brother, do you mean that the 5 space battleships are equivalent to the 495 space battleships? Let's consider each of us to deal with half of it, right? Do you want to be so cheating? However, Wang Feng did not refute, nor did he ask Duan Lei if he could eat these 5 space battleships in one go. Now that Duan Lei has spoken, it means that he must be certain. Moreover, with the life energy stored on the Hope, it would be difficult for these 5 Space Ghost space battleships to break through the energy shield of the Hope. So, when the 5 space battleships bypassed Wang Feng's Yanhuang and rushed towards the Hope behind Yanhuang, Wang Feng ignored them. His target was the 495 space battleships and the densely packed small fighter planes that were rushing toward him with great force. After those 5 space battleships passed the Yanhuang driven by Wang Feng and the other space battleships on the opposite side also reached each other's range. An air battle that the commander of the Space Ghost fleet and all the surviving Space Ghosts will never forget has finally officially begun. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Doomsday Special Forces. Author, Huanjing Chengzhu. Chapter 766. The first to open fire were the battleships of the Space Ghost. Nearly 500 Space Ghost battleships, at the same time, launched a covering fire towards the location of the Yanhuang. A large number of beams of light directly covered the location of the Yanhuang and the path ahead. This is because the commanders of these space battleships, because they saw the order from the Space Ghost headquarters, began to pay attention to this human battleship in their hearts. If this human space battleship was really ordinary, the Space Ghost headquarters would never issue such an order. Moreover, the commander of the space fleet gave these space battleship commanders the order: destroy the human battleship at all costs. In this case, no matter how much energy they waste, there will be no punishment. As long as they kill this human space battleship, it will be a great achievement. Because the beams of light were too dense, a large number of light balls burst out after arriving at the Yanhuang. The commanders of the Space Ghost battleships were stunned when they saw this situation. Because such a situation means that their attack hit. So easy? Didn't we just come to make a tentative attack? How did we solve this human warship with just one salvo? Because it was too easy, these space battleships didn't react for a while and didn't continue the attack. The commander of the space fleet was also a little dumbfounded, because he couldn't figure out what was going on. Rikas praised this human space battleship to the sky, which made him feel inexplicably scared. He never dreamed that this human battleship was so vulnerable. However, they obviously trusted their firepower a little too much, and some of their beams did hit the Yanhuang. However, Wang Feng deliberately took on these attacks. It's not that he couldn't dodge it. It was quite simple for Wang Feng to dodge this wave of attacks. However, in that case, he would have to expose the speed of the Yanhuang in front of those Space Ghost battleships. The ships that came to intercept him were only the warships sent by the fleet to test him, and their number was less than 1/10 of the entire fleet. Wang Feng certainly didn't want to expose his trump card so early. Besides, his life energy reserves were quite abundant now, and it was no big deal to consume some of it on the shield to resist those beams. Moreover, Wang Feng did not accept all the beams that attacked him, but was selectively hit by several weaker attacks. However, after these weak beams hit the energy shield of the Yanhuang, due to Wang Feng's deliberate creation, the light balls that collided between them appeared extremely huge. This made those cosmic ghosts think that at least half of their attacks should have hit the Yanhuang. Even if the Yanhuang had an energy shield, the intensity of being attacked by so many beams in an instant must have exceeded the limit that the energy shield could withstand. Therefore, those cosmic ghosts all believed that the Yanhuang should have been torn into pieces in their concentrated fire attack. After a while, the leader of the 500 space battleships, the commander of a large battleship, was about to ask his fleet commander through the communicator what they should do next. The scene in front of him turned him into a sculpture and froze there. Not only him, but all the other space ghosts who saw the scene were collectively petrified, looking like the terracotta warriors of the fish space ghosts. In the area where the light group was still flashing, a huge space battleship was rushing out of the light group at high speed and flying towards them. This space battleship was naturally the Yanhuang. The Space Ghost's warships had stopped moving at this time, and even the space battleships behind them had begun to turn around. In their opinion, this large human space battleship had been destroyed, and they should have nothing to do in the next battlefield. The remaining small space battleship was preparing to attack the 5 battleships that attacked it, and it could easily kill it. At this time, the Yanhuang, driven by Wang Feng, rushed out of the light group area and attacked them. Just after rushing out of the light group, the 2 main guns on the bow of the Yanhuang space battleship launched an attack on the opposite Space Ghost fleet. 2 thick energy beams directly hit the 2 space battleships in the front. Then, 3 consecutive energy beams came one after another, and before the 2 space battleships had any reaction, they directly shattered their energy shields and turned the 2 space battleships into 2 fireballs. Their shields were just the standard energy shields of the Space Ghost fleet, and 1 or 2 energy beams could withstand them. However, 4 consecutive energy beams were concentrated at the same position at the same time, and they were fired by the main guns of the flagship-level space battleship. Their shields were already damaged when the 3rd energy beam arrived. Without the energy shield, the fragile hull of their battleship could not withstand the attack of the main guns of the Yanhuang. Especially Wang Feng is now extremely familiar with the battleships of the Space Ghost, so the position of attack is naturally the key point of the enemy battleships, so he achieved great success in one fell swoop. It was only then that the space battleship commander, who had originally planned to send back the good news, woke up from a dream. He immediately shouted loudly into the communicator, but the target had changed from the commander of the space fleet to the commanders of the space battleships around him. The original victory report naturally turned into a somewhat frightening and angry order. All the team. Attack, attack with all your strength. However, at this time, the Yanhuang had already rushed into their battleship group, like a tiger rushing into a flock of sheep, and began to attack the battleships around it wantonly. Since the Yanhuang had already entered their lineup, the battleships of the Space Ghost seemed to be a bit defensive and did not dare to let go of the attack. Because once your attack is dodged by the Yanhuang, it is very likely to accidentally damage your own warship on the opposite side. The Yanhuang Hao has no such scruples. Except for itself, everyone here is an enemy. Therefore, as long as a warship appears in front of him, Wang Feng will use naval guns to kill it without hesitation. In just 10 minutes, the Yanhuang driven by Wang Feng killed 14 Space Ghost battleships of various sizes. Now, not only the commanders of the space battleships surrounding the Yanhuang were frightened, but even the Space Ghost battleships in the distance also felt fear. Especially the commander of the space fleet, he now understands why Rikus has such a high opinion of this space battleship. I finally know why Rikus was so anxious to join up with other fleets when he was leading his remaining space fleet. The performance of this battleship is so weird. It is obviously a flagship-level super-large space battleship, but it has the agility of flying a small fighter plane. Few of the beam rays shot by the Space Ghost battleship were able to focus it, and most of them failed, or even hit their own battleships. Even the beam rays that hit were directly offset by the battleship's energy shield. Now the opponent's energy shield is still intact, and there is no loss at all. The commander of the Space Ghost fleet immediately sent another message to his headquarters, confirming to the headquarters that this space battleship was indeed the human battleship that Lucas encountered before. Then, the commander of the space fleet looked up at the battlefield in front of him and found that just when he sent such a message, several space battleships had already been destroyed by the Yanhuang and became space junk. Get ready. The entire army is pressing forward, and all small fighter planes are moving forward to ram the enemy ship. The commander of the space fleet suddenly became worried. Instead of ordering a retreat, he directly ordered all the space battleships to press forward. Because he saw that although the human space battleship was quite flexible, it was still too big. Therefore, he did not dodge all the beams that attacked him. Although the beam rays that hit him were not many, in the eyes of the space fleet commander, the human space battleship must have consumed a lot of money at this time. Moreover, he also carefully recalled the previous battle report of Rikus. At that time, the main force of Rikus's fleet only encountered the previous small fighter plane. They have not had direct contact with this human warship, at least not their main fleet. The only ones attacked by this human space battleship were those that were injured in the previous explosion. It is said that some of these battleships do not even have shields, and some have lost their power systems, and some have lost their fire power systems. In other words, what this battleship dealt with before was just a group of disabled space battleships. But now it is different on my side. At least before encountering it, my side was in a full state, and all the battleships had full combat effectiveness. Therefore, the commander of this cosmic ghost fleet suddenly decided to use his own fleet to destroy this human warship. Although they saw the horror of Yanhuang, because they got the order, the more than 5,000 space battleships who were originally hiding behind to watch the show. At the same time, they advanced forward and came into contact with the defensive formation, spreading out, seemingly preparing to surround the Yanhuang. Doomsday Special Forces. Author, Huanjing Chengzhu. Chapter 767. The main reason that prompted the commander of the Space Fleet to issue this order was naturally the promise made by the Space Ghost headquarters to him before. As long as he destroyed this human battleship, he would be promoted. In this case, as long as he could really destroy this human battleship, even if all the battleships of his space fleet were destroyed here. For the commander of the Space Fleet, this is also a business that can only make money and not lose money. As long as he can take one more step, he can enter the real management of the Space Ghost. At that time, the space battleship is not what he wants. Although being the commander of the space battleship looks very glorious, but always leading the fleet to fight outside, not only does he have no chance to reunite with his family, but he is always in danger. Maybe at some point, he will die due to an accident. Just like this guy Rikus, after experiencing the Xianyuan incident, Rikus will definitely be punished. If things go wrong, he will not only lose his position as the commander of the fleet, but also be sent to a military court. Although his defeat was mainly due to the rebellion of the commander of another fleet, Piccolo, that is, Xianyuan. No. Xianyuan was originally a human, but he was just disguised as a space ghost, so it can't be said to be a rebellion. And Piccolo's position was appointed by the headquarters, so strictly speaking, this failure was not the responsibility of Rikus. But naturally no one at the headquarters would be responsible for this failure, but since there was a betrayal, someone must be responsible for it, so, Rikus must bear this black pot. This can only be said to be his bad luck, because it happened that his fleet caught up with this incident. In fact, no matter which fleet is replaced, the end will not be much better than Rikus. Having foreseen Rikus's miserable end, the commander of this space fleet naturally wants to go further. There are only 500 space battleships in front, less than 1/10 of their entire fleet. But they have only lost dozens of space battleships now, but have hit the shield of Yanhuang no less than 20 times. So, if I launch a general attack directly, maybe, I have a chance to take down this human battleship. After all, this human space battleship has limited energy. If I put all my troops on it, I can wear it down, unless, it has inexhaustible energy. As long as its energy is consumed, the moment it loses its energy shield, it will basically be its death. This miserable commander of the Space Ghost fleet, of course, doesn't know that his unless is just what the human space battleship in front of him has. If you want to consume all the energy stored by Wang Feng now, well, if they fire all the ships at once, and Wang Feng doesn't dodge, it is estimated that if they continue to attack for 2 or 3 years, they can consume all the life energy stored by Wang Feng now. In fact, this can't be blamed on the commander of the Space Ghost fleet. I'm afraid even Xianyuan can't imagine that the Devourer's nest he created actually stores so much life energy. Xianyuan can't think of it, and the Space Ghost who didn't care much about the Devourer naturally doesn't know it. So they only knew that the Devourer had been destroyed by this human warship, and they didn't even think about the harvest. Therefore, under the temptation of entering the management, the commander of the Universe Ghost Fleet finally made a decision that made him regret for the rest of his life. The Universe Ghost headquarters would not know that a promise originally intended to motivate his subordinates would eventually become the death warrant of the fleet commander. Seeing that all the other warships had also gathered together, Wang Feng was secretly happy. Since entering the battle, Wang Feng had not used his full strength. Not only did he not release the speed, but he also did not release the firepower. The Universe Ghost naturally didn't know that the Yanhuang had always used the main guns on both sides of the bow. Although these two main guns are also main guns, they are not the most powerful firepower on the Yanhuang. The strongest firepower of the Yanhuang is the Star Destroyer located in the center of the bow. From the name, you can know the power of this main gun. However, everything is relative. Although this Star Destroyer cannon is extremely powerful, it not only consumes an astronomical amount of energy, but also needs 5 minutes to charge. Its biggest weakness is that it cannot be kept for a long time after charging, and must be fired within a quarter of an hour. Otherwise, once the huge energy is disordered, it may explode directly. With such a huge amount of energy, once it explodes, I am afraid that the Yanhuang will be destroyed without the attack of the cosmic ghost. The most abnormal condition of the Star Destroyer cannon is that the shield cannot be opened during the 5 minutes of charging. This is also the main reason why the Star Destroyer cannon did not exert its power when the cosmic ghost invaded the human planet. At the beginning, there was a flagship-class space battleship that was ready to use the Star Destroyer cannon, but it was hit by artillery fire during the charging process. Not only did it not hurt the enemy ship, but because of the self-explosion of the Star Destroyer cannon, it also injured the friendly forces around it. Therefore, the cosmic ghost did not know that the human race actually had a giant cannon with power beyond their imagination. Wang Feng had never seen the power of the Star Destroyer cannon, because it consumes too much energy, so Wang Feng did not dare to experiment. Although according to the instructions of the Star Destroyer cannon, Wang Feng's current stored life energy is enough for him to fire hundreds or thousands of shots. However, they still have a lot of things to do in the future, and there is only one devourer nest. After consuming all the life energy, Wang Feng didn't know where to go to replenish it. He is not a devourer, nor a space ghost. It is impossible for him to look for life planets one by one, and then kill in order to plunder life energy. Therefore, Wang Feng has never seen the power of the Star Destroyer cannon, but now he plans to try the power of this weapon that is said to be able to destroy a planet with one shot. Seeing the large group of space battleships behind the opponent pressing up together, Wang Feng directly drove the Yanhuang, rushed out of his battleship group, and went up. Seeing Wang Feng rushing towards him, the commander of the Space Ghost fleet gritted his teeth and issued an order to concentrate fire, ignoring the space battleships he had sent out before and chasing after Wang Feng. Attention, everyone, concentrate the maximum firepower on the human battleships immediately. Those who disobey the order will be punished by military law. Hearing his order, the commanders of the remaining more than 400 space battleships were shocked. Because the order they received before was to destroy the enemy ships at all costs. So after Wang Feng drove the Yanhuang out of their encirclement, all their battleships did not leave the battle, but followed closely. Now this order from the commander of their fleet undoubtedly pitted them together. But they didn't dare to dodge, because the order was. Attention, everyone, concentrate the maximum firepower on the human battleships immediately. Those who disobey the order will be punished by military law. Since it was all, then naturally it was theirs, so none of them dared to turn around and leave their own firepower attack range. If they died in battle, at least their families would benefit. If they escaped in battle, their families would also be implicated. Being able to be the commander of a battleship means at least being a member of a small family. They dare not take this risk. So, in the next moment, whether it was the Space Ghost battleship behind the Yanhuang or the fleet group in front of the Yanhuang, at the same time, they launched the maximum firepower and launched a concentrated fire attack on Wang Feng's Yanhuang. This attack, compared with the previous concentrated fire, has increased more than 10 times in both quantity and intensity. This is the advantage of space. If it is on the ground, limited by the terrain, no matter how many people there are, only the few people in the front row can enter the battle at the same time. In the universe, there is no limitation of terrain and space at all. Up, down, left, right, Baba, no. This is contra, it should be that in space, up, down, left, right, everywhere can become the attack position of the battleship. So, at this moment, what Wang Feng has to face is equivalent to more than 5,000 large, medium, and small space battleships attacking him at the same time. At this time, even Duan Lei and his men, who were fighting with the 5 space battleships in the distance, couldn't help but look over here. Although they had confidence in Wang Feng, after all, it was the concentrated fire of more than 5,000 battleships. Even though Wang Feng had inexhaustible life energy, the energy shield could only withstand a limited attack at the same time. With this kind of attack now, even if Wang Feng's Yanhuang was hit by half, the shield would probably be broken immediately, and the ship would be destroyed and people would die. At this time, Wang Feng was also highly focused, staring at the beams of light that were shot at him. Although he controlled the Yanhuang, he was not the only one on the Yanhuang. There were also tens of millions of soldiers and civilians on the Yanhuang. Once Wang Feng failed and the Yanhuang was destroyed, these people would definitely follow him and die in space. Therefore, Wang Feng now controlled the lives of tens of millions of people, and he certainly would not take it lightly. Now the Yanhuang was in the middle, with more than 5,000 spaceships in front and more than 400 spaceships in the back, and the distance between these more than 400 spaceships and it was quite close. Moreover, at this moment, all the spaceships, whether in front or behind, launched the strongest attack on the Yanhuang. The overwhelming energy beams directly submerged the Yanhuang in an instant. Even the more than 400 spaceships of the Ghost Clan following the Yanhuang were not spared and were all swept in. Doomsday Special Forces. Author, Huanjing Chengzhu. Chapter 768. When the dense beams of light exploded at the same time, all the space battleships felt the tremor of space. The scale of this attack was obviously much larger than the previous one. In particular, the more than 400 space battleships of the Space Ghost were also directly involved in this round of attack. Although these more than 400 space battleships knew their situation as early as when their fleet commander issued the order. In order to survive by chance, they transferred all the energy in their battleships to the shield in order to block this attack. However, their wishes were unfulfilled. They faced attacks from their own battleships that were more than 10 times their number. Their strengthened energy shields, like fragile eggshells, were gently broken under the attack of their own battleships, and then their battleships were directly torn into pieces. But at this time, the commander of the Space Ghost fleet did not care about the situation of these battleships at all. As early as when he issued the order to concentrate fire, and even when he asked these warships to tentatively attack the Yanhuang, he had already abandoned these 500 space battleships. Along with these space battleships, there were also tens of millions of small fighter planes. How could they survive the firepower that even the space battleships with shields could not withstand? Even if they were affected by the shock waves generated by the explosion of those energy beams, it would be enough to make them dust in the universe. What made them particularly depressed was that they basically did not play any role in this attack, and they were almost wiped out. Dead. The commander of the Space Ghost fleet looked nervously at the huge light ball formed in front of him due to the explosion of energy beams and space battleships. Although it is said that in such a huge energy explosion, there is no possibility for space battleships to survive. However, because of the previous reminder from the headquarters and the nearly perfect performance of the Yanhuang, the commander of the Space Ghost fleet is still unsure at this time. There. A voice of a space ghost came from the communicator. To our left front. It escaped. The commander of the Space Ghost fleet quickly looked to his left front and found the Yanhuang, which was flying far away and preparing to escape. Ha ha ha. The commander of the Space Ghost fleet laughed loudly. Chase. Everyone chase. The commander of the Space Ghost fleet was in a very good mood at this time. Although he had just lost hundreds of space battleships, in his opinion, it was totally worth it. Because the Yanhuang he saw now was no longer the same as when it first appeared. The energy shield surrounding its hull, which emitted a light blue halo, had disappeared at this time. Chase at full speed. Its energy shield has been broken, proving that it has little energy left. All of them. Chase this human battleship immediately. The commander of the Space Ghost Fleet gave an order loudly. Whoever destroys it, I will promote him to Fleet Commander. In the eyes of the Space Ghost Fleet Commander, the Yanhuang has already exhausted its energy, and even the energy shield is unable to open. The threat of such a human battleship is naturally greatly reduced. He even thought that he would soon enter the real high-level scene of the Space Ghost. That's why he made a promise directly. The guy who destroyed the human space battleship, he will promote him to Fleet Commander, which is his current position. If he can really get promoted again, it will be a piece of cake to fulfill this promise, and it will not be a problem at all. Now he is just the commander of a space fleet, although he is also a senior official in the Space Ghost. But the meaning of the next step up is completely different. The difference between them is probably equivalent to the difference between the Devourer Commander and the Mother Nest Guard among the Devourers. Although the Commander can be regarded as a high-level existence among the Devourers and can command tens of thousands of troops, in the eyes of the Mother Nest, he is still a cannon fodder that can be abandoned at any time. The current commander of the Space Ghost Fleet has a status similar to that of the Devourer Commander. Now seeing that the Yanhuang has no shield and escapes directly, how could he let Wang Feng go? Under the promise of the Space Ghost Fleet Commander, all the other space battleship commanders, like Chicken Blood, drove their battleships and desperately chased the distant Yanhuang. "Commander, what should we do?" At this time, a voice came from the communicator. It was a battleship commander among the space battleships that besieged the Hope, asking his superior. "After you kill that battleship, come and join us." The Space Ghost Fleet Commander has no time to pay attention to them now. He is desperately urging his battleship to chase the Yanhuang at full speed. Hearing his superior's answer, the commander of the space battleship shook his head helplessly. Their 5 battleships had already engaged Doomsday's Hope. However, this battleship, which looked almost the same as their small battleship, was much faster than them. Moreover, this battleship was as slippery as a fish and did not tangle with them at all. It had been fighting guerrillas with them. Due to their speed, they simply can't catch up with each other. How the hell are they going to fight like this? However, now it may be because the human warship has escaped, so this small space warship seems to be a little panicked. Judging from its current route, it seems that it wants to bypass them and chase the human space battleship. "Spread out. Let's surround him," a battleship commander said in the communicator. "Spread out? Then our advantage will be gone." The commander of the other space battleship hesitated. "Are you a pig? If we don't disperse, we are not as fast as the other party. When can we kill it?" The space battleship commander who spoke before scolded unceremoniously. "Just now, did you hear the order from Your Majesty the Commander? Whoever can kill that human warship will be able to become the fleet commander. Do you want to command only one battleship for the rest of your life? Now hurry up and kill this guy. If you're lucky, maybe we can catch him if we rush over." "All right." Hearing this, the commander of the space battleship no longer hesitated. So, all 5 space battleships spread out and formed a fan shape to outflank the Hope. Ha 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 ha. Xiao Lei. They were indeed fooled. Tang Haoshan laughed. Everyone on the Hope was not worried about Wang Feng because the Yanhuang lost its shield and escaped, because Wang Feng had just told them through the communicator that he had deliberately lured the opponent's fleet. In fact, even if Wang Feng didn't say hello, they could probably guess it. Especially Duan Lei, after seeing that Yanhuang was able to escape from such a dense beam attack, Duan Lei knew that Yanhuang must be fine now. The other fleet commander could think that the Yanhuang was unable to turn on the shield again because it ran out of energy. But everyone on the Hope knows that Wang Feng has nothing else but a lot of life energy. He wants to use up the energy of his Hope. Well, Poor child, I hope you won't be hit too hard. A wonderful life is waiting for you. Doomsday's current mission is to kill these 5 space ghost battleships. When Wang Feng rushed out of the energy light ball, he asked them. Doomsday told Wang Feng casually that as long as there were no other warships to cause trouble, it would only take a matter of minutes to defeat these 5 warships. However, now the 5 battleships have indeed been dispersed by him, which means that their opportunity to counterattack has come. But this is only a few minutes. All right? Minutes, an hour, that's also 60 minutes, right? As long as the following unit is minutes. The point is that they need to kill all 5 space ghost battleships. When they were on the planet, there was a gap between them and Wang Feng. Now that they were in space, the gap was even bigger. All right? You are a pig's trotter, you are awesome, but we can't be too bad, right? Of the 500 space battleships, only 5 came to attack them, while the rest all went to attack the Yanhuang. And now, of the 500 warships, the 5 on their side are the only ones left. This is a bit too shameless. Seeing that the 5 space battleships behind him had all dispersed, Doomsday gave an order, and the Hope drew a beautiful arc and flew directly towards the space battleship on the far left. The commander of the opponent's space battleship was stunned for a moment, then looked around and found that the battleship next to him was already approaching him, so he felt relieved. Prepare to attack. The commander of the space battleship shouted an order. Of course he knew about his own warships. He had also commanded such small warships before. With the opponent's firepower, it was not impossible to break through one's own energy shield, but at that time, other battleships had already arrived to support, and the opponent had no chance at all. Before the two sides even got close, Doomsday's Hope fired 2 energy beams and attacked the space battleship. Moreover, how dare a human use our space ghost's battleship? He simply doesn't know how to live or die. The battleship commander curled his lips disdainfully. It's a waste to launch an attack before we've even entered the optimal shooting range. Boom. As soon as the space battleship commander finished speaking, a huge explosion sounded in his ears. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Doomsday Special Forces. Author, Huanjing Chengzhu. Chapter 769. The commander of the space battleship was stunned, and then his stunned expression became the last expression of his life. The Hope was modified, and naturally included the ship guns. The Space Ghosts still used the ship gun power of the previous small space battleships to measure the ship guns of the Hope. It can only be said that these Space Ghosts have too little contact with humans, and they don't understand what human insidiousness is, what it means to play pigs and eat tigers. The commander of the space battleship didn't understand, and his superior, the commander of the space fleet, naturally didn't understand. At this time, he was still immersed in the great joy of his upcoming promotion, and followed the Yanhuang's ass and chased after it. Now the scene on their side looks very spectacular. The Yanhuang fled in front, followed by more than 5,000 space battleships, which were lined up in a long line. It looks like a train flying in space. Although the front of the car driven by Wang Feng is a bit far from the carriage. As the Yanhuang flew forward, it occasionally turned sideways to avoid the beams fired by the warships behind it. Although the power of the beams was not great at this distance, the Yanhuang had no energy shield and would probably be destroyed if hit. Fortunately, there were only dozens of space warships left in the front, and the distance was far enough, so Wang Feng was still able to avoid all the beams. And these space ghost warships did not find that during the continuous escape of the Yanhuang, a huge amount of energy was constantly gathering towards its bow. This was naturally Wang Feng, who was charging the Star Destroyer. In terms of strategy, Wang Feng might not be as good as Doomsday, but in terms of tactics, After the tempering after the end of the world, Wang Feng was definitely a master or even a grandmaster. He did not need to formulate tactics before the battle. After entering the battle, as the situation on the battlefield changed, Wang Feng could adjust his tactics at any time. At the beginning, when Wang Feng was fighting with the more than 400 warships, he deliberately did not use his maximum speed to show weakness to the enemy. Then, during the battle, he deliberately took a few attacks from time to time, so that the opponent could see the hope of killing him. Later, he took advantage of the massive concentrated fire attack and cancelled the shield, making the commander of the Space Ghost fleet think that he had used up his energy in that attack. In fact, Wang Feng had already turned on the maximum speed of the Yanhuang before the energy beams were about to arrive, and avoided the attacks of those beams. Because of the obstruction of the energy beams, the space battleships on the opposite side did not notice Wang Feng's Yanhuang, and they avoided it before the beam attack arrived. The space battleships behind the Yanhuang did see it, but they were destroyed by their own artillery fire before they could report the situation. After that, Wang Feng naturally slowed down again and immediately began to charge the Star Destroyer. Moreover, on the way of escape, Wang Feng changed his direction several times, so that the Space Ghost warships behind him slowly formed the shape he wanted. At this time, Wang Feng couldn't help but feel proud. Before the end of the world, he was bored and played online games. He was often scolded by his teammates, saying that he was a master of dragging trains and a pitfall. But now it seems that the words used here are still quite ideal. It's a pity that those who scolded him at the beginning were probably killed by zombies, and then turned into zombies, and then killed again by humans, devourers, or mutant beasts. Otherwise, Wang Feng must let them see what's wrong with dragging a train. Towing a train also requires skills. 5 minutes passed quickly, and the Star Destroyer was finally charged and ready to fire at any time. Wang Feng looked at the long team following behind him. Although he still felt a little dissatisfied, it seemed that it could only be like this for the time being. After all, the other party was not his subordinates, and it was impossible for them to be arranged in the formation he imagined. After sighing secretly, Wang Feng began to gradually reduce his speed. Now the Star Destroyer has been charged, that is to say, the energy shield can be used. The energy shield cannot be turned on only when the Star Destroyer is charged, because the energy fluctuation is large at that time, which will cause the energy shield to be disordered. But once the charging is completed, the energy shield can be activated again regardless of whether it is fired or not. Of course, if it is still not fired after 15 minutes, when the Star Destroyer explodes, the shield will not play any role, and the entire battleship will be torn into pieces in an instant. Seeing that the speed of the Yanhuang has slowed down, the commander of the Space Ghost fleet was ecstatic. He seemed to have seen that the Supreme Council of the Space Ghost was waving to him. At this time, the Yanhuang driven by Wang Feng also suddenly changed. The Yanhuang did not continue to escape, but turned its head while moving forward, and continued to advance a short distance after the head rushed. Then, the blue light shield lit up again, proving that the energy shield of this human battleship has been working again. Seeing this situation, the commander of the Space Ghost fleet did not feel disappointed at all, but smiled even more happily. Because in his opinion, the Yanhuang knew that it couldn't escape, so it simply didn't escape. This human warship must have transferred all its remaining energy to its energy shield, preparing for a final battle with his fleet. Ha ha ha! Don't fire! The commander of the Space Ghost fleet ordered loudly, since the energy of this human warship has been exhausted, then just capture it. A complete human warship, if he can bring it back, he will definitely get more. Thinking of this, the commander of the Space Ghost fleet was so excited that he couldn't help himself. Approach it immediately, and then surround it. It has no energy. Go forward and attack slowly, consume its shield, and then capture this warship with the mechanical arm. The commander of the Space Ghost fleet continued to give orders. He knew that his order might cause his fleet to lose some warships again, but he didn't care now. He was even sure that once he reported to his superiors, he would capture the human warship that had once beaten Rikus to a pulp and was terrified. Then, even if he destroyed his fleet, no one would blame him. On the contrary, his contribution would be unimaginable. However, Wang Feng did not seem to give them the opportunity to surround him. When he saw that the fleet of the Space Ghost had begun to approach him and was about to disperse, Wang Feng gently pressed the start button of the Star Destroyer and started the Star Destroyer. A huge bright light suddenly lit up in front of the Yanhuang warship, and then a light band that seemed to be able to see the end of the universe shot from the bow of the Yanhuang to the Space Ghost fleet in front of it. The commander of the Space Ghost fleet still had an excited smile on his face, but his eyes had already flashed with despair. From the light band in front of him, he actually smelled the breath of death. However, the speed of the light band was too fast, and they had no chance to dodge, and were directly enveloped in the light band. At the moment when the Star Destroyer was launched, Wang Feng's Yanhuang was pushed back by a huge thrust, and it flew back for hundreds of kilometers before it slowly stopped. Wang Feng cursed. What the hell is this? Why didn't the instructions for the Star Destroyer say that there would be such a large recoil? Fortunately, there was no planet behind me when I launched it, otherwise, I would have been directly killed by you this time. Wang Feng certainly didn't know that after the ultimate weapon, the Star Destroyer, was developed, it consumed too much energy, so it was only equipped on a few flagship-class space battleships. But test firing, it has never been tested. It can be said that Wang Feng is the first person to use the human race's Star Destroyer. Because the Star Destroyer cannon had just been developed, humans had completely unified the galaxy, and those members of the parliament were unwilling to pay for the daily maintenance of the warships. Not to mention, so much energy was consumed just to experiment with a weapon. Now the entire galaxy belongs to the human race, so why do we need such a powerful weapon? Destroy our own planet? If it weren't for the fact that this thing had already been developed and several were manufactured, and there was no place to put it if it wasn't installed on the warship, they might not even install it. Therefore, the operating instructions and various data parameters of the Star Destroyer cannons that Wang Feng saw were all inferred by the ancient human race themselves. Although there were warships that charged the Star Destroyer cannon before, they were destroyed before they were completed. If Wang Feng could know this truth in advance, I wonder if he would still have the courage to use the Star Destroyer cannon. However, despite the scolding, Wang Feng still shook his head, and then drove the Yanhuang and flew back. Because according to his calculations, the warships of the cosmic ghosts just now were not all covered by the firepower range of the Star Destroyer cannon. In particular, he was not sure about the power of the Star Destroyer cannon. He needed to confirm his results again. However, just as Wang Feng was driving the Yanhuang and preparing to fly in the direction of the previous Space Ghost fleet, Wang Feng suddenly froze. He looked in the direction of the Space Ghost, swallowed hard, and muttered. Doomsday Special Forces. Author, Huanjing Chengzhu. Chapter 770. Although Wang Feng is now 400 or 500 kilometers away from his previous position. But don't forget that this is space, there is no obstruction, and Wang Feng has a sky eye, so it is not difficult for him to see the current situation of those Space Ghost fleets. I saw that the Space Ghost fleet, which was densely packed before, has now become scattered. Only those space battleships flying on the edge of the fleet were lucky enough not to be covered by the light bands emitted by the Star Destroyer, so they escaped this disaster. However, most of these space battleships are small or medium-sized battleships, and the total number is only more than 1,000. And those large battleships flying in the center of the fleet, including the flagship of the commander of the Space Ghost fleet, have disappeared without a trace at this moment, leaving no wreckage. It's as if they have never appeared. And some unlucky space battleships are just half covered by the light band, and the other half are not. So, their warships were neatly cut open, and thick smoke was still coming out of the cuts, which seemed to be traces left by high temperature. Wang Feng was shocked, but he did not forget to drive the Yanhuang to fly to the previous position. And those remaining space battleships were completely dumbfounded. They roamed the universe and were invincible. When had they ever seen such a terrifying weapon? Is this really an attack from a warship? After Wang Feng approached half of their distance, these space battleships finally reacted and fled in all directions. They didn't even try to distinguish the direction of their escape. Anyway, as long as they could stay away from the human battleship, even if there was a star in front of them, for example, the sun, they would crash into it head-on. Anyway, it was night now. And those space battleships that were cut in half could only stay where they were, waiting for Wang Feng's arrival. Although their battleships were cut in half, there were closed systems inside the space battleships, so those who stayed on the intact side were temporarily safe and worry-free. However, when the Yanhuang returns, their lives will probably end with it. The only way to survive is that their companions whose warships are intact will come to rescue them. But the problem is that at this time, their companions can't care about them at all, they have been scared out of their wits. They are even still feeling lucky that maybe with these guys restrained, they will have a better chance of escaping. Wang Feng is not ready to chase those space ghost warships that are fleeing. Although the Yanhuang is fast, if it catches up, it can also kill dozens of warships. But now for Wang Feng, this kind of thing is completely meaningless. If they can be wiped out, it's okay. If there is such a possibility, even if it takes more effort, Wang Feng will kill them all. Not for anything else, just to keep the secret of the Star Destroyer. The reason why the Star Destroyer achieved such a brilliant victory this time is that it almost destroyed an entire fleet of space ghosts with one shot. But this is achieved when the space ghosts don't know the existence of the Star Destroyer. It was precisely because they didn't know about the Star Destroyer that they foolishly lined up in a long column, allowing Wang Feng to adjust the angle by himself, and then included most of their warships in the attack range of the Star Destroyer. And next time, even if the Star Destroyer is used again, it will definitely not achieve such an ideal result. Wang Feng dared to bet that the warships of the Space Ghost must have recorded the situation just now and sent it back as a video. After the headquarters of the Space Ghost got the video, it would definitely study it carefully. At that time, the shortcomings of the Star Destroyer would be exposed to the Space Ghost. After using the Star Destroyer, Wang Feng also roughly understood the Star Destroyer. The only advantage of this thing is that it is powerful and has a long range. The rest are all disadvantages. The first is consumption. The previous shot consumed a lot of Wang Feng's life energy. If he hadn't obtained the legacy of the mother nest, I'm afraid he would cry for a long time after firing this shot. Secondly, the charging time is long, and during the charging period, the ship guns and shields cannot be used. And the Star Destroyer has a fixed attack range, especially the zombies must be fired within 15 minutes after charging. In other words, this pitfall thing can only be used after entering the battlefield, and cannot be charged in advance and then enter the battlefield. Therefore, although this Star Destroyer is powerful, there are too many restrictions on its use. Perhaps it is really like its name, it is only suitable for attacking planets. Perhaps, when Wang Feng can find the headquarters of the Cosmic Ghost one day, the Star Destroyer can be used again. However, Jiji knows that the headquarters of the Cosmic Ghost must be heavily guarded. Will he be given 5 minutes to recharge? Every space battleship has a battle video, and now this battle video must have been transmitted back to the headquarters of the Cosmic Ghost. The methods used by Wang Feng in the battle before, although they deceived all the Cosmic Ghosts present during the battle. But after studying the battle video, I am afraid that those Cosmic Ghosts will be able to understand why Wang Feng did that at that time. Therefore, Wang Feng must know that if he wants to use the Star Destroyer next time, he will definitely be attacked by artillery fire during the period of time when there is no shield when charging. Before, there were only sporadic beams of light attacking him, because he was not at full speed, so the commander of the Space Ghost fleet thought that he could not escape at all, and wanted to capture his warship, so he was not so eager to destroy him. Next time, it will definitely not be so cheap. Hundreds of kilometers are only a short distance for space battleships, so Wang Feng quickly returned to the previous battlefield. Looking at those incomplete space battleships floating in space, Wang Feng showed no mercy and killed them one by one with ship guns. After completing the clearing, Wang Feng suddenly remembered that he should have left some battleships just now, at least dismantled some parts, and what about the hope in the future? However, it is too late to remember now. Those battleships have been turned into space garbage by Wang Feng. Shaking his head, he secretly sighed that he had not considered it carefully. Then, Wang Feng drove the space battleship and flew towards the location where Duan Lei and his team were. I don't know what the results of the battle are now. 1 against 5, although it is nothing for Wang Feng, it is already a difficult task for the Hope. And those Space Ghost battleships that fled in all directions began to slowly gather together after discovering that Wang Feng did not chase them. It was not until this time that they finally remembered that they should report this information to other space fleets and the Space Ghost headquarters. Originally, they did not have the authority to send information across levels, but now, their commander has been killed by the human battleship together with his flagship. Therefore, even if they contact the headquarters directly now, they will not be blamed. Especially this time, the battle scene is so shocking that the headquarters must have no time to take care of their cross-level reporting after getting the battle video. In fact, before, when their fleet sent the news of the discovery of the human battleship back to the headquarters had already modified the previous order. Now all the Space Ghost fleets are gathering towards their location. As for Wang Feng and his home planet, Atlantis, the Space Ghosts did not pay any more attention to it. For the Space Ghosts, the most important thing is to kill the human race's space battleships and the ancient human race in the space battleships. As for their planet, the Space Ghosts believe that the ancient human race will not stay on that planet after knowing that they have discovered the coordinates of their planet. So, the crisis of Atlantis was resolved inexplicably. Wang Feng did not expect that he accidentally encountered a Space Ghost fleet and actually saved his home planet. This is also good news for Wang Feng and his friends, although there is no one they care about on that planet. But after all, it is their home planet, and it is naturally best to be able to preserve it. At least, no one will destroy the military soul monument in the short term. When Wang Feng returned to the original space overlap, he was surprised to find that there was nothing around. In the vast universe, there was nothing except the wreckage of the warship. Wang Feng's heart sank, and he quickly used the communicator to contact the Hope, but no matter how he shouted, there was no response from the other side of the communicator. Madman! Look around now, is there anything? Seeing Wang Feng's anxious face, Meng Fei said in a deep voice. Because no one else was needed to drive the Yanhuang, usually only Meng Fei and a few others stayed in the control hall. The others were in other places on the Yanhuang, either training or planting, and were busy with their own things. Hearing Meng Fei's words, Wang Feng gritted his teeth, but still drove the Yanhuang as he said and began to search in this piece of the universe. Half an hour later, Wang Feng still did not find any traces of the Hope. But this was a good thing for Wang Feng. Because what he just checked were the wreckage of some space battleships around. If the Hope is really found among these wreckages, then... No? Where did they go? Wang Feng looked at the star map and asked blankly.